Jason Andrews is a man beset with initiation by the otherworldly. As host of the Paranormal Patio podcast, Jason has spoken with a variety of highly notable names in the fields of the paranormal, supernatural, and all-around high strangeness. Jason's own experiences with the phenomenal, however, are chock full of magic and synchronicity and are as astounding and perception-shattering as any of the guests to which he has played host. On tonight's episode of MIK, as the veil begins its thinning, we sit down with Jason to discuss the call of the ethereal and how that call has seemingly guided him most of his life to culminate into the strange journey he now finds himself on with the upcoming release of his video documentary project, Surface, Before Me My Altar. From prophetic lucid dreams and the kinfolk of Aleister Crowley to the possibility that the very entrance to the hollow earth itself has been found right here in the Bluegrass, the hour has just struck midnight on the Paranormal Patio, and MIK is in conversation with Jason Andrews to hear just how it all leads back to Kentucky. Welcome to Kentucky.
The birthplace of Abraham Lincoln and built on the largest cave system in the known world. The home of Daniel Boone, Hunter S. Thompson, horse racing, and bourbon.
But when the hour grows late, the Bluegrass state becomes the breeding ground for realms beyond those familiar to the human race. In the east, ghosts, spirits, and ethereal entities roam the hills and hollers.
In the north, Mothman beats his wings along the banks of the Ohio River.
To the west, small green creatures stalk farmhouses and disappear without a trace when shot.
While in the south, the energy of the veiled witch is palpable just over the border. Joining with us as we investigate just what goes on in the Bluegrass night.
Ask the question, how many coincidences are too many? There's no need to check the clock.
There's no need to check the clock. Time is an illusion.
Time is an illusion.
And it's midnight.
It's midnight. In Kentucky.
In Kentucky.
In Kentucky. In Kentucky. Not out of all times, places, spaces, and ages, the full moon has risen once again, and we are here with Jason Andrews from Paranormal Patio, a phenomenal podcast. Very much like this one. Been listening to it all week. So many great episodes, so many great guests, so much great insight onto all things weird and strange. Jason, thank you so much for being here, man.
Yeah, you know, I hear the goblins croaking, so it must be midnight in Kentucky.
The time is upon us.
It's really funny. I thought I would be clever with myself, and whenever we scheduled this, I set a timer, like a calendar thing. I put it at midnight, which was really dumb because I could totally overlooked this entire interview.
No, that's the energy we need for this show, man. That's it. I'm
here to bring it.
Expected anything less. That is great. All right, man. Well, we just got finished doing Paranormal Patio, and geez, what a great interview. Like we said, I mean, we already said this on over there, but man, it's so great when, you know, that weirdness gauge, something we talk about so much on the show, when you meet somebody and you're like, we could be as weird as we want to be. Let's just let it all go. And we definitely did that over there, and it was such a great conversation. Man. Met you at the Goblin Market last month, appropriately on the full moon in September. Here we are again on a full moon doing the podcast. I knew that if anybody would appreciate that, it'd be you, so I had to bring that up.
Yeah, dude. Not lost on me at all. It's really funny because, you know, we took a little break in between, and I was outside just before I came into the studio, and the coyotes were all like howling and yipping like to the south of me, and I was like, yep, there it is.
It's rolling in, man. That's midnight in Kentucky rolling in.
Yep.
That is nice. That is nice. So yeah, man. Let's start at the basics. I know that you like to start your episodes very much the same way. So I'm gonna hit you with the classic question: how'd you come into these weird worlds, man? What got you started? Why Paranormal Patio? Tell us about it. Give it all to us.
Sure. We can go way back.
Let's go way back.
Picture it. Midwest, Illinois, 1985. No one knew what was about to be born that August afternoon. But it was me. Yeah.
That's another thing we share in common. Both August babies, Leos.
What day?
The 12th.
Okay, I got you beat 7th. But
appropriate number, 7's. Good number.
Yeah, yeah.
Good number there.
And my son was born on November 7th, which is cool too.
Yeah.
11/7.
Nice.
So, I was born into what I call the Ghostbusters generation.
Mm-hmm.
By the time I was able to consciously consume media, Ghostbusters was always there. And so I came up with that as part of, just my life. I loved the cartoon. I was allowed to watch the movie. Honestly, I was allowed to watch pretty much anything. I don't remember ever having that restriction on me, and I'm grateful for that. But yeah, I was really into Ghostbusters, really, really hard. And that's what did it, I think.
Yeah.
So you get a little older. I got kind of tired of being force-fed the Christian religion.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
At about 11 or 12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I don't like it. I don't get it. It's not for me. Which is really hard here. And I know that you can relate to that because, we're not in dissimilar situations. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
I know everyone thinks Illinois is Chicago, but outside of Chicago, it's not Chicago.
No. But this is an interesting thing as well, right? Because Kentucky, I feel like, is the top of the South, the bottom of the Midwest. You know what I mean? And so like Kentucky culturally gets a lot of both of those. It's a weird liminal space, to throw that one in there. It's a weird liminal space between the Midwest and the South. So yeah, I mean, and I've been through Illinois quite a bit, going to Chicago because there ain't nothing. no. But I've been through Illinois quite a bit, and it really isn't like it is. It is the very similar culture, very similar people, up till you hit Chicago. You know what I mean?
Very clear dividing line.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you start exploring the basics of, that you're supposed to have some sort of religion, that you're supposed to have some sort of spiritual beliefs, and I went through a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I went through a whole lot, and I still go through things. Sure.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I landed in magic in high school. Well, I thought I did. Looking back, I was an idiot. You know what I mean? And that led me to where you mentioned on my show that spirituality kind of led you into magic. I was the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Because magic led me into astral projection and lucid dreaming, which led me into spirituality and reincarnation. And that really did shape a lot of the foundation. And then, just like you, I got older and I put it all to the side for a while. And retrospectively, was it the right thing to do? I don't know. Who knows?
Sure.
But when I watched Hellier, I was greeted in season 2 with the beautiful smiling face of Lonnie Scott, the hypnotist. And it said on the screen that their location at the time was Mattoon, Illinois. And I thought, that's really crazy because that's only like 40 minutes from my house.
Yeah.
I wonder if this guy lives there. Like, I wonder if he's online. So, I fanboyed him up. I looked him up on Facebook, and sure enough, like, there he is. And it says he's in Mattoon. Like, that's crazy. So I sent him a message, and we small chatted. It wasn't long after that he had made a post for his podcast wanting some t-shirt designs done.
Mm-hmm.
I've done graphic design for a long time as a hobby.
Sure.
And, I was like, I'll do it for you for free, just let me know what you want. So we had this working relationship where I did a lot of graphic design work for him. And then Pennyroyal came out, and Nathan reached out to me. Didn't know him. He didn't know I'd already listened to Pennyroyal. He reached out to me and said, "Hey, my name's Nathan Isaac, dropping this Pennyroyal podcast, and I was wondering if you'd be interested in having us on the show." And it was around this time of year, because it was right after season 1 came out, which is in October at some point, and it was cold as balls here.
Yep.
And so Paranormal Patio started recording in my patio, and the plan was, when it got cold, that's it for the year. We wait until spring.
Sure.
And so here it is, November, and I'm like, man, I would absolutely love to have you on the show, and I would really love talking to you. Unfortunately, it's not in the cards right now. And I felt like shit, because
I understand. As someone who books interviews, I totally get it. Yeah.
For like a solid week, I was like, this is stupid. Like, what, So I reached back out to him. I'm like, no, I can't pass this up. Like, let's do this. And so by that point that we got to the interview, I had listened to Pennyroyal all the way through a second time. And there's a line in the last episode where Nathan mentions Aleister Crowley coming through Western Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
Around this exact same time, I had learned about Edidorpa through Hellier and started reading it, but I came across the map that's in Edidorpa that has Smithland, Kentucky on it, which is in Western Kentucky, Livingston County. And that set off this enormous synchronicity storm, because I had had a lucid dream about this town and then found it in real life, just coincidentally. And so I asked,
which you sent me the trailer for. You can see all this in the trailer for the documentary that's coming out. Yeah. Amazing trailer by itself.
Well, thank you. This is before the documentary was a glimmer, right? That was not what this was going to be. I just want to know what happened to me.
Sure. Around what was the date, if you remember, that you had the lucid dream? Do you remember?
It was 2001, but I can't tell you when.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah. No, I understand.
So because of him mentioning Aleister Crowley being in Western Kentucky and in Livingston County, I was like, I have to ask him about this specifically, because it was kind of a throwaway line in the show. It wasn't relevant really. I mean, it tied into the Breaks Interstate Park stuff and that, but it's too weird.
Yeah.
So I asked him about it, and we had this big conversation, and we kind of come to an agreement that we would both look into it more. And the very next day, I'm on Twitter. I wake up in the morning. It was a Saturday morning. I'm scrolling through my phone, as you do. I'm on Twitter, and someone had made a post about the Goat Man of Livingston County from the Inhumanoids book. And I hadn't read the book.
Sure,
but it was too weird. And so I immediately go to Facebook, open up the Messenger, and start telling Nathan, hey, I found something weird about Livingston County, because we agreed if we found something, we would share it with one another.
Yeah, for sure.
He goes, so did I. And I said, well, what'd you find? And I can see that he's typing, and I'm typing what I found. And we hit send somewhere near the same time. And it was the same exact thing, the same exact post that we had seen on Twitter, the same person, the same everything, And then we had a good laugh about that. And then we started digging into that story. And then we started digging into other stories and other stories and other stories. Before I knew it, here I am. I'm surrounded by all this insanity and synchronicity. And really what I've been surrounded by is great people.
Yeah.
And we talked about this too, but it has been the biggest wonderful thing to come of being into this paranormal stuff is just the people that I've met. And like, it's a little bit emotional, because I told someone a few days ago that I don't really ever feel as loved as when I'm in Somerset and I'm around these people.
Yeah.
Like, it's touching. I've never felt, even by my own children, as loved as Nathan Isaac claims to love me. I tell you what, dude.
Oh,
He's
no.
not saying the words second order cybernetics. He is saying, I love you, man. I love you.
I
He just
totally,
looked right up.
I totally get it though. We did talk about this, and this is something that we continually bring up on the show. Um, about how this weirdness brings people together, about how, digging into it, having these experiences really brings people together. It's interesting you bring up that Inhumanoids book, because I talk about Barton Noonley all the time. He's one of the great Kentucky investigators. I've got Mysterious Kentucky behind me on the bookshelf here, another one of his books. And there's a Sasquatch sighting. I can't exactly remember where it was from or what happens, but this guy goes to gets attacked by this thing, right? And has claw marks down him and all this stuff. And he goes to the hospital, and the nurse that patches him up ends up becoming his wife. They end up getting married, and she is the one who writes Barton about this Sasquatch encounter. So I mean, right there, man, like how much more of a significant relationship can you have other than, husband and wife, children, whatever, that is encouraged by a high strangeness event. And this happens all the time. And I mean, that's what you're describing in a way, right?
Yeah. And not to be cheesy and corny, but like it has really made me fall in love, not with any person specifically, but with all of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? All of everything, everything that we've talked about and everything else. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, man, you sit back and you look at it and you're like, this is just great.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful to have this.
Absolutely, man. And, something I find myself doing is, I will oscillate, and I think we all do this in a way, but I oscillate between like being like, geez, I live a very magical existence. Like, I have a lot of strange, wonderful things that happen to me, that happen to me a lot, so much so that they almost start to become mundane at some point. And then you oscillate from that into, well, nothing magic ever happens. This is such a bland reality, whatever. And then
Yeah.
you'll flip back to, geez, this is such a magical reality that I share with these people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No. Yep. 100% feel it.
Yeah. So, but anyway, continue on how you came about to this place with us tonight at the midnight hour.
Well, I conned a lot of people, and that's really no. That's really because of the podcast and because of the research that it forced me to do, and then because of the weird synchronicities in Kentucky,
Mm-hmm.
the research that I've done there.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can't escape it.
Yeah.
And Kentucky comes up almost every guest I have on my show. And I don't bring it up.
Yeah.
Most of the time it just comes up. And perfect example of that is Kiki Dombrowski. I had her on my show in season 2, and I love Kiki to death, and I think she knows that. But I had no idea what I was going to talk to her about. And we're just chatting before we start recording, and she said something about Paducah, Kentucky, which is right next door to Livingston County and Smithland, and that's what it became. It just became the episode is called Everything Goes Back to Kentucky, and it does all the time.
Dude, yes. It's so cool that you have an episode named that, because like we literally said that in the past episode.
You said that.
Yeah.
I was like, yep. If I may be so bold as to ask you a question on Midnight in Kentucky.
Here we go. Yes, absolutely, brother. Ask away. I'm excited.
What is it? What is it, man? What is Kentucky? Why does this shit happen there?
TLDR answer.
Yeah.
It's the hub of reality. Like
There you go.
we talked about this a little on Paranormal Patio just a few months ago about how back to the ancients, there has been tradition after tradition after tradition of just so much ritual and ceremony. And, aside from all the ritual and ceremony, like aside from all the magical workings, just constant human interaction with Kentucky, constant just living here and stories passed down. And, we didn't even touch on this about how, the whole thing about how the Appalachian Mountains are the highlands of Scotland, where so much of the Fey legends come from and so much of those encounters happen. I mean, and that's the very thing that we're living in right now, you know what I mean? And not only that, but a lot of those Highlanders came here and settled here and brought all of that with them. And I don't know if you're familiar with American Gods. I'm sure you are.
Sure.
Yeah, and I mean that whole theory has always stuck out to me. You know what I mean? That we carry these things with us and we give them entity through the narratives we tell about them. And you've talked about that a lot on Paranormal Patio about how graveyards, and this is something I actually wanted to bring up and talk about. And this is something I say constantly as well. And I can't remember if it was you that said this or a guest that said this, but there is absolutely activity that happens in graveyards. Graveyards for it's high activity. There's a lot of graveyards that seem to be haunted for whatever reason. However, I don't necessarily believe that's the spirits of the dead. You know what I mean? Like I just don't buy that. Like it doesn't make any sense to me. But why is it that? Why do you think it is that there's so much activity in places like graveyards and things like that?
TLDR version.
Yeah.
Quid pro quo. Egregorialization.
Yes, my brother, and that's it. Like we have been here so long and we have done so much ritual and so much ceremony and just lived our lives here and brought our monsters here and brought like our our dreams here to on the light side of it. And brought so much. And there's been the French who explored here and who settled here, and there was the English, and then of course there was the Cherokee and all of the indigenous nations who were here long before that. So much history has happened here, and so many people of those people have brought their fears and their dreams and all of that with them. And I think that it's just created the egregore that is Kentucky. You know what I mean? Like the whole thing is just haunted as fuck.
Yeah,
so, yeah, and it really all does come back to Kentucky in some way, which kind of brings me to exactly where I wanted to start with you about your experiences with Kentucky. Because what led you to make this documentary that's upcoming was an experience that led you here to Kentucky, right?
Yeah. So it just trying to figure out what happened to me. I compiled so much information that I had to do something with it. And the natural reaction I had was, you dumbass, you host a paranormal podcast. Like, what do you mean? What do I do with it?
Yeah.
It's bigger than that to me.
Yes.
And I wanted to give it more energy and more focus and build it to at least some semblance of importance, whether or not it's important to other people, which, my modesty says it's absolutely not. But it was important to me to justify not only the time that I spent going through all this stuff, but also to justify the initial experience itself. And so, yeah, I decided to turn it into a documentary, and like a fool, I thought I could do it in like 8 months, having never made a movie in my entire life, having never edited a video in my entire life. And my ambitions were high, and I did not make the cut. I was like, it ain't happening.
Well, I was gonna ask you if you had any like previous filmmaking experience, or where I could watch your films at.
Nope. So I've watched a few,
For sure. Yeah, that's a good start.
But that's really where it ended.
Yeah.
No. I love movies. Movies were like a parent to me growing up in a lot of ways. And that's why I think I was so foolish in assuming that it could be easily done. It's like, yeah, you've shaken hands with this person a million times. You can make them a suit from scratch. Nope,
Yeah.
I can't. But I'm trying really hard, and I've learned a lot about the process. And I hopefully someone gets something out of it. If one person gets something out of it, even if they just think it's kind of neat, then cool. You know what I mean? But it's been cathartic for me to do this, and so that's why I did it, and that's why I'm finishing it. I've wanted to walk away from it a million times.
Yep.
But
Dude, I absolutely understand that. And I think that that's a large part of these projects is, wanting to walk away from them at a certain stage.
yeah. But for multiple reasons, I didn't. Like, one, I already told people I was doing it.
Yep.
So like
It's a big motivator.
if I don't do it, then I'm just a piece of shit liar. You know what I mean? So I'm just a quitter. You don't have to count on me for anything. He's not going to do it. Which in retrospect could have saved me a lot of trouble. But also, like I keep saying, like I had to give this proper attention, I think, for me to make sense of any of it, because it's such a weird story. It's so weird. And what I found was that there are aspects of Livingston County that are just as bizarre, if not more bizarre, than the experience that I had there. So fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. And of that, and I mean, well, shit, man, I've made a whole show of it, of the whole little state here. But I mean, specifically around Livingston County, that is a window area. And I hesitate to use the term because really the whole state of Kentucky, the Appalachian Mountains themselves are a window area. But there are pockets, within the window area itself where the activity is that much greater. And that whole area is absolutely a spot where the activity is enhanced for whatever reason.
There's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, let's look at the mounting evidence. First of all, the Hopkinsville goblins, Kelly Hopkinsville case. That incident took place, less than an hour away from Livingston County.
Yep.
Land between the lakes, where there are legends of dogmen eating entire families, or at least one, right? That is less than an hour away from Smithland, Kentucky, and there's a lot of weird shit there, like Aleister Crowley's family being buried there, and the goat man of Livingston County that popped up in Inhumanoids, and just tons and tons of weird synchronicities that I'm both blessed and cursed to have uncovered.
Hold up. Aleister Crowley's family is buried in Smithfield.
They are buried in Livingston County.
In Livingston County. That is wild, dude. I did not know that.
Yeah. I'll give you the address if you want to go there.
Yes, absolutely.
Just don't share it.
Yeah, for sure. So it's not a well-known address of where they're buried.
Oh no, it took me like 2 months maybe to figure this puzzle out.
Okay.
But I did. And I can tell you a funny story about the first time I went there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't get scared of paranormal things happening. I look forward to them. I have a weird stupidity about me like that. And someday it'll probably get me killed.
Or at least sucked into an alternate dimension.
That day, I was not afraid of running into the ghost of Aleister Crowley's great aunt. No, didn't care. But I knew that this cemetery was incredibly isolated, and that there weren't any houses for miles around it, and that there would be no cell phone reception. And the fact that I knew I was going to be going there alone, I was on edge.
Yeah, for sure.
I had protection, but I still, if you fall and break your leg and then a snake bites you, like you're just going to drag yourself to a hospital you don't know the location of.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? So,
and I mean, the backwoods of Kentucky are dangerous, regardless if you're, not just Sasquatch and goblins. Like, there's some wild shit out there that you don't want to fuck with.
Yeah. Like, am I going to cut through somebody's, like, illegal grow field or something and have someone, but so I looked at Google Maps for this place, and I felt like I had a pretty good grasp on how to get there. Again, really isolated. And so I make the turn onto the road, which is like a 3/4 of a lane, like dirt and gravel road. And I don't know, maybe 300 yards down the road, I see a clearing. In this clearing, there's this trailer, and there are 3 or 4 pickup trucks parked outside.
Mhm.
And I see people in the trucks, like in the beds of the trucks.
Mm.
And I'm going like, 15 miles an hour. It's this curvy ass, barely a road, and here I am with Illinois license plates on my car.
Yeah.
And I see these people. And I'm thinking of all the terrible things that they're going to do to me, because what else am I supposed to think?
For sure.
So I go by them and I look, and they've all got rifles and shotguns.
Uh-huh.
And this is clearly some sort of like hunting blind
Right.
that they made out of like a trailer. And the only thing I can think to do is wave as I go by.
That's it, man.
So I waved and I went about my business. But immediately I knew.
Did they wave back?
No.
Okay. That's a sign.
I knew that when I turned around at this cemetery and I was coming out, that one of those trucks was going to be parked across the road.
Uh-huh.
They were going to drag me out of my car. No one would ever know the terrible things that they would have done to me that day. I knew it. Like,
sure.
It took over my existence. So I make it to the cemetery. And now I'm faced with a second threat of my life, because the entire cemetery, which I could not have known until putting myself in it, is covered in pine trees. I am allergic to pine.
Oh, dude. So pause. How synchronistic is it that the one thing that you like, this is your test. This is your facing death for your, that's awesome. And I'm not there and don't have to deal with that kind of way. Go ahead.
That's not lost on me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't at the time either. So my plan is find these graves as fast as possible, film and or take pictures as fast as possible without touching anything, get in my car and drive to my final moments on Earth. That's my plan.
Sure. Enjoy it while you're here.
So I do that, and every time I come around a curve on this road, I'm like, they're going to be there. This is it.
Yeah.
1 curve, 2 curves. The suspense is building, and 3 curves. And then I come up on the blind, and they're all still standing in their trucks, and they wave at me.
Ain't that it, man? Ain't that it? That is amazing. That is amazing. Tell me you got this on camera, like for the document.
Are you kidding me? I needed both hands on the wheel, not only for the road, for the getaway.
For hitting that gas.
Are you kidding me?
That is amazing. But the story itself, that is an amazing story. All right, well, right there, man. I mean, maybe this isn't so much paranormal, but this certainly happens in the paranormal world a lot. It's that moment where all your expectations are totally subverted, where you are expecting certain death, and then, hey, how's it going? You know what I mean?
Yep. Whew. Yeah, that was really that was a big relief. And I didn't look back. I got the hell out of there.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Since then, I've been back to that cemetery 5-6 times, I think. And
how'd you deal with the pine trees going back?
Just didn't touch them.
Just went in? Hey.
What are you going to do? If that's how I'm going to get taken out, maybe that's how it's supposed to be all
That's
along.
it. Right here in Aleister Crowley's family's graveyard. Succumbs to pine needle wounds. Yeah.
Why not?
So who in his family is buried at this cemetery?
Interesting you should ask, Ben. Let me tell you.
Yes, please.
If I may be so bold as to answer one of your questions on your podcast.
I don't know. You're kind of overstepping now, man.
Okay. All right. Point taken. Shots fired. Okay.
Shots fired.
So Crowley's mother's grandfather's son, which is her uncle, Crowley's great uncle.
Okay.
Moves from Somerset, UK to Kentucky for some reason. Marries Mary Martin of Golconda, Illinois. And that is just across the river. At the time, there would have been a little township there in that area, not far from the cemetery, where there was an operating ferry that would take people back and forth across from Illinois to Kentucky and so forth.
Right.
And it was actually, I believe, also used on the Trail of Tears to ferry Native Americans on their way west.
Okay.
And so they move. She moves with them to Kentucky. They're both buried there. All of their children are buried there. One of their sons, this was wild when I found this, blew my mind. This is Crowley's second cousin. In 1905 and 1913 was elected Livingston County Sheriff.
Whoa.
And at the time of his death was a U.S. Deputy Marshal.
Did he have the last name Crowley?
No.
Okay.
Because Crowley would have been from Aleister's father.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
I'll tell you anything you want to know about him off the air. I just don't want to send people there because I don't want it to be a place that people go and desecrate.
Absolutely.
Where I can't go back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Selfish as it is.
No.
I want to still be able to go there. So
I understand completely. That was very much the same way. Well, I mean, this happens with a lot of paranormal hotspots. Very similar to what happened with Strawberry and Hellbridge here in Somerset.
Yeah.
Right after and shit. I mean, it's happened with Skinwalker Ranch. It's happened with several different paranormal sites. Should I edit that out? Should I edit?
No.
Oh, okay.
I didn't say anything that I didn't plan on saying.
I have it all planned out, good sir.
Yeah. This isn't my first foray into this.
You're in the conspiracy yourself, aren't you, Jason? You have this all. So hit me with that one more time. Crowley's
great uncle and his family.
So who was the deputy? Who was the U.S. Marshal?
His second cousin.
Okay. Man, that is wild. And he was also sheriff of Livingston County at one point.
Yes, the cousin was. Yeah, twice.
Wow.
How weird is that?
That is very weird. And I mean, that takes us right back to what we were talking about just a few minutes ago with these centuries of lives lived in Kentucky, and the magic connections to Kentucky. Wow. That is so. Is this in the documentary though? Do you talk about this in the documentary?
Let me tell you something, Ben. I don't half-ass anything. Okay. I full-ass everything.
It's full ass.
So not only will you get to see you can see the documentary, sure. Not only do you get to see this documentary, but also, not only do you get to see the cemetery, but I actually convinced a special guest to come there and do an interview for the documentary. Mr. Kyle Cadell drove across the state and let me ask him questions in the cemetery, which he was also anxious to see.
Very cool. Very, very cool.
So yeah, it's in there. The location isn't, and it won't be.
Sure.
I need to blur out the names now that you mention it on the gravestones when I show them, like the last name anyway. I mean,
yeah, for sure.
So
these are the little things of a filmmaker that pop up as you go along. You're like, oh shit, I need to blur that out.
Yeah. The names in Livingston County was another weird thing for me, because if we can take it a little bit back to Edidorpa, which, have you read Edidorpa? Are you familiar with it?
I'm familiar with it. I've not read it, but I know the general idea and consensus of it.
All right.
But refresh. I mean, for everybody that's not Tell us a little.
I'm not going to read the book to you, Ben.
Wait.
It's late. It's after midnight in Kentucky. Okay.
Could you please read us an expert from
What I will tell you is the story of the main character in Edidorpa, whose name is I Am the Man, is very much the beginning of it is very much the exact same story as William Morgan. Okay. And William Morgan, you can Google William Morgan and get into his story at your leisure. Take away this, that his disappearance at the time of the beginning of the story in Edidorpa, they're the same, is the exact same story as I Am the Man. So that has led not only myself, but also a few other people to make the assumption that if Edidorpa is a real story and not a work of fiction, that I Am the Man is William Morgan. William Morgan decided in real life, this is the real life William Morgan, decided to infiltrate the Freemasons in New York and write an expose book called The Illustrations of Freemasonry or Illustrations of Masonry. And they didn't like this very much, this expose, as you can imagine. This is 1825, 1826, I suppose. And yeah, they don't like it. So they make his life hell for a little while, getting him arrested, things of that nature, before they abduct him, and he's never seen again. In the real world, no one knows what happened to William Morgan, but the fallout was quite real because it started the first ever third political party in the United States called the Anti-Masonic Party.
Interesting.
Which had some notable names. And a lot of the Freemasons in that area were, sequestered by the courts, right? And some people actually served time for conspiracy of a crime for the disappearance of William Morgan. Now, if you believe Edidorpa, William Morgan goes on to be the subject of a crazy ritual in which he is aged physically to an old, shambling old man, unrecognizable, and then guided to Cincinnati and further onto a steamship where they exit the ship in Smithland, Kentucky. It's very fair to say that the use of names of people in Edidorpa is incredibly rare. But it's explicitly mentioned that when they arrive in Smithland, Kentucky, they stay at the home of Joseph Watts. This is name number 2 on the list that we're going to talk about here.
Okay.
So in Edidorpa, it's a made-up fictional book. It's not real. It's not about the Hollow Earth. Okay. Let's say that.
Right.
It's not a real story. We're going to operate on
purely fictional.
This is the A path, right? We talked earlier about the A path and the B path. This is the A path. It's made up. It's bullshit.
Right.
But they stayed at the home of Joseph Watts in 1826 or 1827. It's winter between 1826 and 1827. So that's an easy thing to look up. Was there a Joseph Watts in Smithland, Kentucky in 1827? Easy enough. Type. Google, you're my friend. There's a man named Joseph Watts who lived in Smithland from 1794 to 1869. Okay. Edidorpa, the book, doesn't come out until 1895. Right. So after Joseph Watts had died, this book was written and published, if it's fiction. If it's real, the stories that happen in Edidorpa took place in 1827 while there was a living man named Joseph Watts in Smithland, Kentucky.
Right.
Is that weird? A little bit.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're adding Joseph Watts to the list of names, okay? Now, there's another Joseph that comes into play in this, and that Joseph is Joseph Smith, the leader of the Mormons, okay? What was Joseph Smith up to in the same time period, in the 1820s? He's facing a trial for treasure hunting in New York, where William Morgan's from. Not only was he also in New York, he was in modern day an hour's drive away from where William Morgan lived. Okay. Joseph Smith, his brother, and his father were all Freemasons. William Morgan is abducted and killed or disappeared by Freemasons. It is not outside the realm of possibility here. Joseph Smith's father and brother, at the very least, were partially responsible for the disappearance of William Morgan. Okay? If it ends right there, what happens to William Morgan's beautiful young wife? Well, she ends up marrying Joseph Smith.
The originator of the Mormon religion.
Correct. The third wife of Joseph Smith. That's a little weird too.
Yeah.
So we're going to add Joseph Smith's name to the list. So we have Joseph Watts, Joseph Smith.
Okay.
William Morgan's wife is named Lucinda Morgan. Okay. We're just going to throw that name on the list because it's William Morgan's ex-wife or widow and Joseph Smith's wife.
Sure.
So then we can add William Morgan's name to the list, and then we will add Aleister Crowley's great uncle's name to the list, which is also William.
Okay.
Okay. I won't say his last name.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Joseph Watts, Joseph Smith, Lucinda Morgan, William, not Crowley.
Redacted.
So, Joseph Watts has a son. His name is William. Joseph Watts has a wife. Her name is Lucinda. Okay, that's a little weird.
Yeah.
So there's this constant circle of names, like in all of this history of Livingston County, and it was something that I felt I needed to include in the documentary because it was so prevalent in my research.
Yeah.
And you can read a little bit about Joseph Watts, his son William, 1897. It's like 2 years after Edorpa comes out. He has a book called Chronicles of a Kentucky Settlement, and it's kind of like a romanticized version of his parents' life. It's semi-historical.
Sure.
It's not really good, but you could read it.
But you could pick it up.
It's better than William Morgan's illustrations of Masonry. That book is just like the minutes of a Freemasons meeting.
So that's what I was going to ask. Illustrations of Masonry, and I don't think I've ever talked about it on the show before, but there are a lot of people that talk about how, you reach the highest levels of Masonry and it's all Solomonic magic and a lot of different magic traditions, right? So there's nothing in there like that.
I wouldn't say that. I would just say that it's very difficult to read.
Okay. So it's very dry and academic.
And also written in,
Yeah.
1825.
Yeah. For sure. Okay, so what does become of all of this? I mean, where
William Morgan in the real world is never seen again. There's a body that turns up in the Niagara River.
Uh-huh.
And
the Niagara River in
New York.
Yeah. Okay,
northern New York. There's a lot of back and forth between, is this William Morgan or is this Canadian guy who went missing that the Freemasons have found his wife and have brought her to their defense to say, this is my husband, this isn't William Morgan, because the Freemasons are getting rammed for this disappearance hard. They're incredibly suspect because the guy who writes a book exposing your order is now missing.
Yeah, suddenly disappears.
Who does that? Well, probably that, So yeah, it was big enough that it started this political party, which saw the likes of Millard Fillmore and John Quincy Adams as part of this political party. I mean, it was heated.
Yeah.
It was so heated in New York at the time. I'm going to look at my notes and I want to get the name of this town right because here we go. Another sync. In Livingston County, New York, right between the town of Batavia, where William Morgan lived, and Canandaigua, where Joseph Smith lived, right in the middle, Livingston County, New York, stands the American Hotel. Okay, this becomes the host of the last Livingston County Lodge, and they're meeting there in secret because people want them dead. Like, it's that bad. Okay. So they've been meeting there for a while, and their jackets and hats and things are coming up missing during their meetings. Like, they go to leave. Oh, my coat's gone. Okay. This goes on for a little bit until one meeting when they find all of their artifacts of clothing have been returned, which I imagine they were pretty happy with until they realized they had all contracted smallpox. And almost every Mason at this meeting contracted smallpox. People were stealing their clothes to infect them with smallpox. That's how bad the Freemasons were living after the disappearance of William Morgan.
But
Everything.
Yeah, for sure. But one of the things that pops up in my mind, and this all plays with Freemasonry, with archetypes, is the Knights Templar. All this sounds like the treatment of the Knights Templar in 17th century.
It's kind of weird, right?
Yeah, for sure. But go on.
I never thought of that. No, absolutely never thought of that at all.
But I mean, it's very similar, and the Freemasons have the whole tradition of the Knights Templar and of tracing their roots back to that.
It's very cyclical, eh?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. So what becomes of Joseph Watts and his family? Nothing. They die. Joseph Smith, of course, goes on to after marrying the widow of William Morgan, creates, Mormonism in Illinois. Their little town that they built here in Illinois, where it really all took off before they moved to Utah, which was weird.
Mormonism comes after all of this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And Crowley's family, which is not really connected to the story other than connected to the place and the time.
Sure.
Obviously they did something right. Their son was the sheriff of Livingston County for 2 terms. He was a U.S. deputy marshal. His tombstone leaves the impression that he was quite revered in the community.
Sure.
So, it's a happy ending, I guess, for him. It wasn't. That whole family was cursed here, man. There were so many infant deaths, which was, it was prevalent here anyway.
Sure.
But when you start to look at stuff like that and you start to really feel, a way about things
for those people. Yeah.
It makes them real. They're not just stories. They're not just gravestones. They were people, and, they had a hard time. They certainly had a hard time. But through that, he's able to at least become a pillar of the community and, probably lived a decent life outside of burying an infant every, 6 months.
Right. Which sadly was very much a part of the time period.
Yeah.
But okay, so let's go back to Mormonism though, and let's talk about this cyclical nature, right? Because I mean, think about this, man. We have Mormonism here and popping up with this, and this is very much centered on the underground, under earth, Kentucky, all of these things, and then we have Crowley, who is in a way a centerpiece of this, right? And then later on in the 40s, we have Jack Parsons hanging out with L. Ron Hubbard, who would go on to create Scientology.
And married Parsons' wife.
Yes. Yeah. So,
Isn't that weird? Isn't that a strange coincidence?
Very much so. So what do you think's going on there? What do you think's up with these cycles? Or do you have an idea?
I think it's just a reemergence of the archetype, I think, man. I can't think of any other way to describe it. It's to me, it's blatant. I think to you, it's blatant that's what it is. How and why, I have no idea. I just think that's what it is. I don't have a basis for it. I mean, you could probably sit down and write out the timelines of all these events and look at them and be like, yep, check. They're the same.
Oh, yeah.
I'm kind of operating at a disadvantage because I haven't done that. I don't really feel like I need to, and that would be a huge
undertaking.
Yeah. I don't want to do that, but it's very, very much to me an emergence and reemergence of an archetype that could go back way before what we know.
Yeah.
You know?
So let's get real weird with it for just a sec. Well, I mean, shit, we're already in the weirdness, but let's get even more weird with it. All right. So in a way, you would say that you're coming around to these things, or coming around to these things as, the person you are now, was due to Hellier, right? I mean, Hellier played a large role in that, right? I would absolutely say that Hellier was integral in my, I would call it an awakening, but that sounds so trite too, right? Like the word awakening itself sounds like one of those Bigfoot alien words. But it awakened a lot in me, and it made me realize a lot about, the nature of reality in a lot of ways. So why do you think it is, right, that Kentucky itself is kind of the centerpiece of this? That, there are so many of us as well, right, that talk about Hellier or Pennyroyal or these things awakening this. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that it's now? Why do you think that you have had this experience? Because you've been moved to tell this experience, right? I mean, for you, this is the artistic experience of, I need to tell this narrative. I need to get this experience out to people, regardless of if I want to fucking quit, which is absolutely a part of it too. I need to tell people this. And I have that too, man. Like a lot of the reason I'm still doing this show after, so many of those cycles of fuck this, I want to quit, just for a variety of reasons, just for the human reasons, is I'm still doing it because I feel like, I have to, like, I got to talk about this stuff. So what is it? Why did we come to this now? What do you think it is?
I can't speak for, literally everybody.
Speak for literally everybody, Jason.
No.
What do you think your experience with it is?
Okay. Preface with, I think it was a breath of fresh air, Hellier, because we have just been bombarded with shitty paranormal television for decades.
Absolutely.
And this was something that, whether or not it seemed incredibly genuine. And spoiler alert, the fact that they didn't find goblins in a documentary about finding goblins, to me was like, okay, this isn't Zach Baggins.
For sure. Yeah.
This isn't that. This is something that is real.
This is not entertainment. This is documentary.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And, because of that, and because of their use of Edidorpa, I can only speak to what that did for my personal life, right? Like I said, I found Lonnie Scott through Hellier, and I didn't mention this before, but Lonnie had made a post when the pandemic started, because he has a podcast. It's called Weird Web Radio. I have to slow down when I say it, otherwise the words just turn into some, I don't know, And so he makes this post about, if you have any artistic ambitions or hobbies that you want to start, it looks like now might be a good time, because we're all going to be locked up. And I was like, man, I had done podcasts before. I worked at a radio station before. I've always enjoyed this media.
Sure.
Maybe I could do a paranormal podcast. This is before I had come across the Edidorpa stuff. Like I knew that Edidorpa was a book. I didn't know there was a map in it that had Smithland on it. Okay.
At this point, had you already had the dream and had that experience?
Yeah. Let's backtrack then.
Okay.
In 2001, I had a lucid dream about my girlfriend and I flying around the Shawnee Forest in Illinois. And we crossed the river and we landed in front of this really super nice house in an otherwise, not real nice neighborhood. I had no idea where this was, no basis of geography other than it was across the river from the Shawnee Forest. And 2 years later, so this would have been 2003, maybe 2004, around that time, my friends and I were going on a day trip to Shawnee Forest to go hiking. And they had never been there before, and I'd been there a lot. I grew up going there. We were really poor. It was a cheap vacation.
Sure.
I knew a lot about Shawnee Forest. I knew a lot of cool places to go and to take them, and I was really excited to take them to see these things. And I mean, we were fresh out of high school or in senior year of high school, somewhere. It's right around in there.
Right.
And we are coming to the end of the list of things I know to do, and we decided we would go to the Smithland Lock and Dam to see if we could get to the visitor center, because I had been there before when I was younger. So we get there and the road is gone. There is no road to get to the visitor center. Like, you can see where there's like it's blocked off where there used to be a road. It's not there anymore. They're either redoing it or they took it out entirely. Not that we were excited to go see a lock system on the Ohio River, but it was like, damn, we don't want to go home.
Yeah.
So we talked about it and we pulled out the atlas and we decided we would go to the Kentucky side and see if we could get a better look, because from where we were, there was no vantage point for the dam. Smithland Lock and Dam. Here's a town that says Smithland, Kentucky. Let's just go there. It looks like it's lined up with about where we are. Let's go there and check it out. So we drive down to Cave in Rock, southern tip of Illinois, and take a ferry into Kentucky. And we cut over eventually into Livingston County, which, never been there before. Didn't know anything about this part of the state. Didn't know anything about Kentucky at all, really. And this was at a time when I was not really into paranormal stuff. The astral projection stuff was about it, and it had already started to fade.
Sure.
This is 2 years after the lucid dream experience, so like it was on its way out anyway.
Yeah.
But we come into Smithland, Kentucky. I'm riding in the back seat, which is, kind of ridiculous to think about me in the back seat of a like 97 Ford Taurus, but I was. And so we park the car on this road. We just turn off the main highway road and park on the first road facing the river that we see. And we get out and I look up and there's the same house that I had to dream about 2 years before. The exact same. I remembered it vividly. Also in the dream, we walked up to the riverbank and I saw a bunch of dead gar on the bank of the river. So I'm having this moment. My two buddies are taking off to the river, to see there's actually a barge coming through, and we're going to watch this barge come through. We live in the corn, man. We don't see this shit.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
So it's lame by traditional standards, but it was something for us to not be at home.
I feel it, dude. I used to take these adventures all the time.
Yeah. So I'm having this moment, and this dream's coming back to me, and I'm like, this is insane. This is insane. This is insane. Yeah. I can't tell anybody this. They'll think I'm crazy. I walk up to catch up with them on the river, and my buddy Paul goes, hey guys, come here and check this out. And we get up there, and there's a bunch of dead gar on the fucking bank of this river. And then I really was like, what in the hell is going on? And this takes place in Smithland, Kentucky.
Yeah.
And you fast forward from 2004 to 2020 when I watch Hellier and I learn about Edidorpa, and then I read Edidorpa and I end up coming across the map in the book that has Smithland, Kentucky on it. That's when I was like, what in the actual hell is this?
Yeah.
So now 16 years before I had this experience, and Hellier has somehow brought it out of me.
Yeah.
And then, I started digging into the research. Like I mentioned, I got in touch with Nathan and Darian, an interview for my show promoting Pennyroyal. And Nathan and I teamed up on some research into it, which he found interesting because of the Crowley stuff in Livingston County. And I found it interesting because of everything in Livingston County. When I found out that Joseph Watts was a real person and that he was buried in the Smithland Cemetery, I really wanted to go back. And I hadn't been to Smithland, in 16 years. I had no reason to go there. There's nothing there, So during the pandemic in the summer, it would have been like August, I think. We were all really stir crazy here.
Yeah.
We lived in this little house, and there was 4 of us, and we're like, we gotta get out of here. What can we do, where we're not going to get arrested for around people or whatever, we didn't know what the hell was going on. We live in the corn again. So we decided to go down to Shawnee Forest and do some hiking and stuff. Like, we're going to be outside. We can be away from people. We can do something, get out of the house. The kids had never been there before, and it would be fun.
Yeah.
And I said, well, if we're going to do that, would you mind if we made a pit stop in Kentucky before we came home? Sure, why? I was like, I just want to find this cemetery and this gravestone, So we get there, and it took longer than I anticipated it to take, and I could tell there was some tension in the car because they were bored. Yeah. And I pull up to the cemetery, and I'm like, now I got to find this fucking grave. where am I gonna? It's a pretty good sized cemetery. Where am I gonna find this? Like, I'm gonna be wandering around this graveyard for an hour or two, and they're really gonna hate me. So I park the car in the cemetery and I get out. And I knew what the gravestone looked like of Joseph Watts because I had, I looked it up online on Find a Grave, and there's a really good picture of it.
Right.
I'm just doing a scan, side to side looking, and I had parked about 15 feet away from it. And like, what are the odds of that?
Yeah.
And I get out, and I take pictures of it, and we go back into Smithland proper, and I wanted to see the house again. Right. Yeah. Had to see. No one in the car knew I had this dream or that this was why I was here. Are you kidding me? I was still like, this is insane.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to see the house again, and I knew from Google Maps where the house was. I looked it up immediately whenever I saw that Smithland was in Edadorpa, and go there, park, and I noticed that 2 houses down is a historic Freemasons Hall in Smithland, which it's not historic because it's a Freemasons Hall. It's historic because it was used in the Civil War for supplies going down the Cumberland, because the Cumberland River starts at the Ohio River in Smithland, Kentucky, in Livingston County.
Which
there's another fun thing.
Yeah, which is a whole thing for me, of course, because we live. Somerset is on Lake Cumberland, which the Cumberland River. Very much.
Yeah. So that's another piece that jumps into the further down the line part of the story. And so like checking the Freemasons Hall out, and then I'm thinking about Crowley when he was in the U.S. at this time, was going to Freemason halls and trying to get all of their secrets from them before he gets kicked out. And there exists a possibility that he was there at that very Freemasons Hall when he was there visiting his family. Wow. You know what I mean? Wow. What? Like, it's another one of those moments where, like, okay, now he's a person because he could have been here.
Yeah, absolutely. So back up a little bit. What was Crowley doing? He was going around all these masonry halls trying to collect their secrets.
Yeah, like all of their rituals and their ceremonies and things. Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know this either.
Yeah, and so he ends up he lies. I don't remember what his cover story was. Like, he was from France or some shit. And but yeah, he would visit these Freemason halls and try to get as much information as he could. And eventually they got wise to it and they ran him out. Like, they ran him out of the States.
How wild.
Yeah.
Wait, they ran him out of America completely?
Yes, sir.
So is this why he leaves America in the first place?
That's correct.
What year would this have been?
1910-ish.
Okay. So this would have been when he starts to develop relationships with people in Europe, when he starts, because, man, what you were saying before about tracing these timelines, I think there's an arguable timeline to be traced when Crowley does the to him leaving America, to World War II, to Roswell, to the I think there's a whole timeline that can be drawn out there. But that's a whole different thing. Go on. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, you're right. It's weird. So, that was the first foray, was going and finding the tombstone and seeing the house again. It's wild, and after that, like, I don't know how many times I've been back to Livingston County. It keeps calling me, and I mentioned interviewing Kiki Dabrowski before, and we didn't know what we were going to talk about. We started talking about Kentucky, and we ended up talking about dreams a little bit, and I told her about how I always dream of floods or water. And she gave me the dream dictionary explanation of being overwhelmed with emotions and stress and things. I didn't think that was the case, and she says, maybe you still have a calling to the river. It sounds like you have a lot of work to do with the river. And that was another one of those little nuggets that popped in where it's like, I really need to follow this through and find out where it's taking me. Why did I have this experience here? This really weird experience here. And why is there all this other weird stuff that happens here? And why are there all these synchronicities here? You know, what's that to me? And so
Yeah.
I decided at that point, like, I'm going to do this documentary. I'm going to tell the story. I'm going to document my journey. I'm going to find some of these places that are mentioned in Edidorpa, right? I'd love to find the cave entrance to the Hollow Earth. So I made
yeah.
I made a point to research that and came to the conclusion of where I think that is. I will tell you the name of it off the air because it'll really blow your mind, but I'm not going to say it on air.
Wait, you think you have found the cave entrance?
That's what I said.
That is what I said, Benjamin. Yeah, I definitely want to know the name off the air. Absolutely.
Yep.
But and I'm not doubting you in any way, man. Like, for real. I trust, like, you know, if you're on my level of weirdness, I trust you. But you're saying that you found the cave entrance to the Hollow Earth.
I'm saying that if this is a true story, if Edidorpa is a true story, and we have to operate under the guise of it being true and also of the guise of it being not true.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
If we're saying it's true, the description and the distance from Smithland lines up with this place. And if we're saying it's not true, we are saying that an uneducated pharmacologist wrote his first novel ever about a man going to Smithland, Kentucky and meeting people who turned out to be real and finding a cave entrance to the Hollow Earth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Like, which one's more plausible? But let me say this first. I am not saying that I think that there's a Hollow Earth or that this is the entrance to the Hollow Earth. I am saying that if there was a cave entrance to the Hollow Earth in Livingston County, Kentucky, I believe that this is where it is.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that it is.
Yeah.
But if there is a cave entrance, this is it.
Have you been in the cave?
No, it's impossible.
Okay.
So there's a spring inside that feeds out into a stream. I filmed it. It'll be in the documentary. You can see it. The cave itself is like a triangle.
Uh-huh. Of course.
In a rock wall, about a 15-foot rock wall. And digging into the history of this property, this location, there's a hole at the top of this wall that lines up again with Edidorpa. And there's a famous scene. I even have it tattooed on my arm. And I got this illustration from John Augustus Knapp's interpretation of the description of this place. I got it tattooed on my arm in Kentucky because I had to.
Yes.
So there's a scene where they enter the spring and his guide says this is the last time you're ever going to see sunlight, and there's this hole above them and the sunlight is shining down. Here, I'll show you. No one listening can tell, but
oh, dude.
Right?
Yeah, and that is the triangle opening of the cave.
So that's weird, right? That someone would just illustrate a fictional scene that would line up with somewhere geographically that also lines up with the location.
Yeah.
Anyway, weird. So anyway, there's history that Freemasons used to visit this place and that they boarded over the hole at the top. And now at the top, there are several buildings on a private property. It's a home and some sheds and things like that, right? So I don't know if the hole's there now, but the hole was reported to have been there. And there are stories of the Freemasons having events and things there. And it's really in the middle of nowhere.
Jeez. So it also looks like a triangular UFO shooting down a beam. I want to say that real quick.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely that. You're like, oh, yeah, that's there.
Well, okay. I believe that there are non-physical pieces to abduction stories. I don't think that everyone who says they were abducted and taken to Venus was physically taken to Venus. It's impossible. Yes. We would burn alive.
Yeah.
So then it's fair to say that there are non-physical aspects of stories about people going to the Hollow Earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
maybe, this is one semi-scientific explanation, there's some sort of gas coming from this spring, and someone went there and the gas rendered them in a state of mental aptitude different than the waking state of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a non-physical experience where they visited the hollow earth, and they came back and told somebody about it. And Edidorpa, and he doesn't believe it. He thinks he's going nuts, and he says, take me to my hometown. Let me prove to you people are going to know what you're doing. Let me prove to you that you won't get away with this. And the guy's like, no problem. Let's go. And they go. And no one recognizes him. And he's like, all right, you win. I surrender. Whatever you want me to do. I took an oath to become a Freemason. Well, the Freemasons are never named in Edidorpa. It's
sure.
A society.
Yeah.
I took an oath to, be a, brother of this, this family, this organization, this order, and I will fulfill my obligations. I apologize for doing what I did, but now I have no choice, and, I'll go along with it. And really the early stages of that story is him coming to grips with that, him deciding, no, I'm done. I've had enough, just kill me, get it over with. And then coming back and being like, you're right. I got to go through with this. And then I'm done. I'm going to kill you. And in fact, when he meets the guide who takes him to the hollow earth, the guy who had aged him is the one who has gotten him this far.
Mm-hmm.
He has guided him from New York to Kentucky, to the heart of Kentucky. Or not really the heart. To me, it is. To me, Livingston County is the heart.
Sure. Yeah.
So he takes him there, and I Am the Man finds this steel rod laying on the ground, and he's like, fuck this guy. This ends now. And he picks up that rod, and he's going to brain this dude, right?
Yeah.
And somebody grabs his arm, and he turns and looks, and there's this humanoid figure with no eyes, naked, white-skinned, dripping wet. And he grabs that hand, and he's like, you're coming with me now. Like, this is where you're supposed to be,
Yeah.
And he's like, all right, I'm sorry, like whatever you say. And then they go, and the trend continues. He's ready to give up at every stage, every trial that he comes to in this journey into the hollow earth is really an existential exercise for him.
Yeah.
On whether or not he can keep going, because everything that is happening to him tells him this is insane. This can't be real. This can't be where I am and what I'm doing. And it proves itself to him, which makes him prove himself to himself.
So what we're talking about here, breaking it down, this is what, if we want to paint this in a mythopoetic light, this is what's happening to you as well, right? As you're journeying into this. And this is happening to all of us. This is the initiation experience. This is the initiation.
Would you like me to give you one more little tidbit about my connection to this weirdness?
Oh, of course.
William Morgan and I have the same birthday. So if William Morgan is I Am the Man, and he's going through this back and forth, should I keep going? Should I stop? Should I keep going? Should I stop? He shares the same birthday as me.
Jason, come on.
Is that something?
Come on now. Yeah, that's pretty astounding, man. Like, that's a pretty profound synchronicity.
Yeah, well, that's been my life for the last 2 years, Ben.
That's it, man. Look, we're in it. We're down in the weeds.
I have one more Kentucky synchronicity that's not related to any of this stuff. That's something that's totally different, and I think you'll really get a kick out of this one.
I do. So before we get off, though, this is also going back to the Invisibles, and I'm sure you remember the storyline. This is one of my favorite storylines in the book. Of I can't think of her name. It's the indigenous Mexican. They call her Boy Witch because it's a transgender person. Her whole story arc is the story arc of the initiation. And how the butterfly comes to her and says the day of initiation never ends. You are always in the day of initiation.
Yeah, how about that?
And man, your whole life from this first experience when you were 16 has been this fucking initiation experience for you.
Yeah,
I think it's hitting me so hard because this is the first time I'm really hearing the whole story, and you're just like, yeah, man, this is my life. Welcome to.
I don't know what you want from me, man. Like, I had no, it was sink or swim,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, I just accepted it. It's like, okay, here I am. Give me what I'm supposed to get. Show me what I'm supposed to be seeing. Grace upon thine ears.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's why I seem so nonchalant about it, I guess. Just I have no choice.
It's also your work. I mean, if somebody asked me what Jason Andrews' work was, I would say this is what it is, man. This is, I don't want to paint it too hard in the spiritual light, but this is very much a spiritual experience, man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. This is reality unfolding to you in a lot of ways. This is the initiation that all of those old magicians talk about and all, yeah.
It is, man. And
I'm excited for the documentary, to say the least.
Well, I've got good news for you, buddy. I will personally send you a link to watch the first cut with us on October 29th.
Awesome. I would love to.
I will send you the link when it becomes available.
Sweet. Okay, hit us with the new other Kentucky synchronicity.
So this just came to light last week. This is new. This is fresh. Ever since I heard about the Kentucky meat shower,
yeah,
I was really drawn to it because of the name of the people, the Crouch family, right? That was the name of the people who were rained upon meat.
Right. Yeah.
Okay? Their last name was Crouch. My grandmother's last name was Crouch, and I thought, wouldn't it be weird if I was related to these Kentucky meat shower people? Wouldn't that be something? So that got me into doing genealogy, which has consumed a lot of my time as well. When I had to take breaks from the podcast, take breaks from the documentary, something else. So this is something that's really enjoyable to do, and you learn about your family and your heritage. And so I start digging backwards from both sides, and I'm like, I'm gonna find somewhere, there's a branch, right? And I got stuck really hard on my grandmother's side for weeks, and finally last week I found that someone who I had gotten information from had spelled this person's name wrong, this man's name wrong. And when I changed it, Ancestry.com's like, hey, look at here, I got some stuff for you. Here's a leaf. Leaf. You get a leaf. So I'm able to go back now to the early 1700s and find that my Crouch family and the Crouch family of the meat shower were both living in Maryland around Baltimore at the same time. So I haven't connected them officially yet, but they're both named Crouch and they're both living in Baltimore, like they're connected somewhere. And then it's weird because unrelated, but it's weird because the story in my family has always been the Crouches came here from Ireland and their name was O. Crouch. And when they moved here, they dropped the O and they were Crouch. Nope. We came from England and we were Crouches when we left. So I don't know where the fuck that came from.
Dude, ain't that the way? Like, you get so many of those when you start looking through genealogy of like, guys, we've been lied to this whole time.
I haven't told any of the family yet. I think I'll just let them keep it because the fanciful version is more fun.
You better hope they're not listening to Midnight Kentucky.
They don't listen to my show. Are you kidding me? I'm probably more likely to listen to your show, really.
It'd be awful if they're listening to MIK and they're not listening to Paranormal Patio.
Well, Pappy, if this is how you found out, I'm sorry.
We appreciate you being a night owl, Pappy.
I love it.
All right, man. So, fuck. Let's
do it. Was something I said I was gonna say here. What was it? Was it the story about the cemetery that I was gonna tell you? On my show, I said I'll save that for whenever it's midnight in Kentucky time, but I don't remember what it was that I was supposed to say.
What was the story?
If I brought you here on false pretenses and you're listening to Midnight in Kentucky right now, I'm really sorry. I hope that I was at least somewhat entertaining otherwise.
Man, this was mind blowing. I mean, like this whole conversation was mind blowing, and it's very much. I mean, do you remember it?
I did.
Hit us with it.
This is a scoop. Give me 1 second for video because I want to show you the gift that interdimensional Bigfoot gave me.
Yes. All right. The interdimensional Bigfoot gift. That's what it was.
Okay. So, while filming the documentary, my first time in Somerset, I met up Kevin and Jessica from Beyond Sight, right? Because I had interviewed them for my show, and they told me about this crazy encounter that they had off Strawberry Road. And so I was like, would you guys,
of course,
is there any chance that you could meet me there when I'm there next week and show me this place? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. Because they're just the nicest fucking people. Like,
they
absolutely,
really are, yeah.
You know? And they picked me up, total stranger. We'd had one conversation at the hotel. They drive my ass out there. We go, we're doing the spirit box session up on this hill. And it's like we're using the Estes method. I have the blindfold and the headphones on. And they recorded it for me. I said, would you guys record this for me for my documentary? And of course, they're like, yeah, absolutely. You know, that'd be great. They sent me the footage. Kevin sent me the footage. I never watched it all the way through because I was like, this is one of the little things I'm going to save for myself. When the time comes to edit this part of the documentary, I will watch it then.
Yeah.
Like,
it was the box you were waiting to open.
Yeah, right. I had watched part of it, but I hadn't watched it all. So for the first time ever, I hear this little conversation. I am inside the spirit box, right?
Yeah.
Kevin hears footsteps in the leaves. And he says, what was that? And I say, I don't know what it's doing. And there's a little bit of a pause or a joke or something. And I say, it's wood. And they laugh like, what is wood? You know, and I say, it's fancy. And then they really laugh like, who says it's wood? It's fancy. Yeah. You know, what are we getting ourselves into? And then I say, in the car park. That's ridiculous. This is all nonsense. You know, they write it off. I don't even remember this happening. And again, I hadn't watched this footage. It had been damn near a year and a half probably since it happened.
And you were doing the talking from the spirit box.
Right. Yeah. Correct. So when we're done there, off, you know, doing our weird stuff out in the woods, they take me back to the hotel. And I open the back hatch of my car to throw my gear and stuff in there, right? And I look down in the parking lot and I see a Scrabble tile laying in the parking lot. And I was like, that's just a weird thing, you know. I don't even remember that conversation at this point. Like, this is immediately after. It's like it was nothing to me.
Yeah.
And I look down, like, there's a Scrabble tile. That's weird. This whole trip, I was taking anything that the universe was giving me.
For sure.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's all on my altar right now. And so I just grabbed it and I flip it over and I'm like, that's not a Scrabble tile at all. It's a little wood tile, but it has a 1 on it and there's no points. So this had to be off of something else. Like, this doesn't make any sense. And so I just grabbed it and I put it in my pocket, and eventually it made its way back to Illinois, and you know, now it lives here with me. But it's a little piece of fancy wood in the car park from interdimensional Bigfoot.
That is insane.
You can still see the melted asphalt on the back of it.
And it does look like a Scrabble tile. I mean, I would totally think that was a Scrabble tile.
Yeah. So, interdimensional Bigfoot gave me a number 1, a little wooden square with a number 1 on it.
So I got to ask, why interdimensional Bigfoot?
Oh, because the story that they told me was like very Bigfoot-esque. And so we went there to communicate with what we assumed to be a fey Bigfoot.
Right.
We had a little communion. We broke bread and we meditated, and then we did a little bit of ritual stuff.
Sure. Yeah. Conjuring ritual.
Sure. And, you know, we made peace, you know, with ourselves and in the spot and with whoever, whatever was there. And then we did the Estes method session. And that's when it's wood, it's fancy in the car park. came. And so I like to say interdimensional Bigfoot gave it to me.
No, dude, I dig it. I dig it a lot. And this makes me comment on something I've wanted to comment on all night. Of course, we're an audio format podcast, but behind you, there is an excellent tapestry of a Bigfoot holding a baby gray alien.
There's a
With
lot
the
going on.
there is, with the men in black, someone being abducted, and a Loch Ness monster.
And black triangle UFOs up here too.
Oh, dude, I didn't see the black triangle UFO. Yeah. That is amazing.
I love this thing.
That is incredible. The perfect backdrop. The perfect backdrop for the patio. Perfect.
Yeah,
patio
it's
backdrop.
here's a little inside scoop for you. It's a shower curtain.
Dude,
But I don't care.
Nah, shower curtains have the best art on them.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You can always
For
get
sure.
the most amazing art, dude. But that is an amazing story, and I mean, it goes straight back to, I mean, this is a mundane question. Maybe this is a too broad of a question. Why do you think all of this is happening to you?
That was the one big thing. Even when I decided to do this documentary project, I didn't know where the hell it was going.
Yeah.
Like I still didn't know why. Like finding all the things and going to spots and researching, like, yeah, like it's really cool and it gets me out to do these things, right? But that's not it. Because even when I found the cave and went there, I thought this is the closure, like this chapter is over. And then it wasn't. Immediately after, I was gifted a little Scrabble tile. And I knew, even though I said, like, I feel this sense of closure, it's over, I knew it wasn't. And until this last Goblin Market last month, I didn't know. I had no idea why. Why me? Why this? What is this? And after everyone left, it was somewhere near 1:30 in the morning or something like that. There's a fire built. Dan Dutton's out alongside the fire strumming on guitar, and he starts singing this song, and it hit me like a wave, man. Just, I don't know that I've ever felt a feeling like that before, ever. Just relief and happiness and bliss in the presence of such a humble man, such a artistic inspiration and kindness and love. And I think that's what it's all for. I think I needed these things more than I would ever care to admit.
Yeah.
More than I even knew to admit, you know what I mean? Like, and it changed a lot for me in my personal life that night right there at that spot. And I think that's all of it led to that, and what that leads to, who knows? But I'm ready for it, and maybe this was something like a prerequisite.
Yeah. Jason, it's always the day of initiation.
I know, that's what I hear.
We are always being initiated. No, man, that was beautiful. Like, and you said something more than you wanted to admit that you needed it. Man, that is so much of all of this, right? I mean, aside from the paranormal, like there is so much that we can't even admit to ourselves that we are in search of. That when it finds us, it hits with that relief and that overwhelming sense of, of calm and resonance and yeah, that's absolutely what it is, man. So
Yeah.
very excited for the documentary. Very excited to talk with you in, well, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk before this, but talk to you again in 2 to 3 years and see where you have come from then to, from now to then in our human linear scope of time for what it is.
If my sanity survives, I'll see you there.
All right, man. Before we go, every guest this month, I'm asking if you got it to tell it. If you don't, totally fine. Halloween episode, very much like your own hair-raising horror week. We kind of talk to our guests, talk to different people, get their experiences with the darker, more horror, interesting, insane aspects of the supernatural, paranormal, high strangeness. You got anything for us? Any type of story, any type of experience that you've had that left you more afraid than anything else?
Will you accept recurring dreams?
Oh, of course. Dreams are bread and butter.
Feared you would. That's the currency I've come prepared to pay.
This audio excerpt has been redacted. To hear this story in full, listen in to the MIK Halloween special, available on the MIK main feed, Halloween Day 2022.
Man, listen. I don't know if you've heard or not, but it's after midnight, and while it's not in Kentucky here, it's after midnight in Illinois, and my studio exists independently of my home, and there's a small walk to get from point A to point B that I'm going to be making alone in the dark. And now I fear for that attic emerging in my backyard from my septic system or something, and me falling into it, because you've got me on a verbal psychedelic trip that I just can't explain.
I love it, man. I love that I'm able to elicit that within you. Sorry I waited till the very end to ask you for your most horrific experience.
Yeah, no problem. It's what I expected, really.
All good.
No, it's fine. It's fine. If I dream about it tonight, though, I'm going to, you'll have a strongly worded email in the morning.
The comment section of this is going to be on fire.
I hope so.
I do have something. I do have a song I'm going to send you that your whole experience that you just told me reminded me of very deeply that you might not want to listen to tonight. Save that for a morning.
No chance. Yeah.
But I'll send it to you when we get done.
This is the equivalent of April Fool's Day for me right now. From tonight until the time I wake up, I do not trust anything you send me.
Yeah, don't. Please don't. I'm going to go ahead and endorse that myself. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, this has been amazing. We have to do this again sometime, even if it's just getting together and bullshitting about weird stuff. This was incredible.
I'm on board.
Very quickly, or take as long as you want. I don't care. Take forever. In your own words, and I love this. One more thing that I love about Paranormal Patio. I love that you're like, take all the time you want and tell us about everything you have going on. That's big. So let me extend that to you. Take all the time you like and tell us everything you have going on.
I appreciate that. I will take very little of your time. Really, I think it all goes back to when I was a child and growing up. I do the Paranormal Patio podcast. I try to have guests on that make me think a little bit, but I take a casual to intermediate approach to listeners. Like, those people are my target audience. If you are just coming into weirdness, you'll find something that you like, and if you've been around for a few years, you'll find something too. But most of all, it's about giving people an outlet and a voice to tell their stories. So really, I'm not a podcast host. Like, I just collect stories and I share them with the world, and I enjoy that a lot. And I only talk to the best people. So you're always going to have someone good to listen to, especially if you don't like me. You'll like whoever I'm talking to. And you can find Paranormal Patio podcast everywhere except for Apple, because it's a dreadful company, and I don't care if it would double my listener base. I don't have anything that's Apple, and I will never have anything that's Apple, and I don't want them to be a part of my life in any way. Despite that, and the fact that you can listen to this episode on Apple right now, I'm going to be lax in my judgment of Ben, and I'm not going to harass him in any way, shape, or form. I just want everyone to know that I stand strongly against it. And if you're listening to this, that's okay. I forgive you. No, but for real, it's not that hatred, but it's close. So yeah, you can find us anywhere that you would listen to a podcast to. We're on YouTube. The YouTube channel is becoming the collected archive of season 1, season 2, and season 3. Right now, season 3 will be returning to posting because I had to take a break for Harry's and Horror Week prep and documentary prep. What else? Paranormalpatio.com has links to everything you need, and then some, I promise. I think that's about all I have. I could list all my cool friends, but I would leave somebody out and I'd feel bad. So
You're like one of those rappers that has a feature on like another rapper's song that's cool with somebody that's not cool with them at all, and you're like, yeah, I'm on here. What of it? That's you on Apple Podcasts right now.
Yeah.
You got a feature on an MIK show, and Apple's like, damn, Jason Andrews, he's on here, but he's not on here.
That's how
I do want to hear. I do want to hear your hatred of Apple sometimes. I do want that story.
Okay. Yeah, sure. No problem.
Because I did notice
right now.
Well, I noticed that on Paranormal Patio too, and I was like, damn, Jason really hates Apple. I need to ask him about this.
Oh yeah. They're awful.
Oh, they are awful. I will totally agree with you.
And I totally understand. I'm not disconnected from the fact that every mega corporation that makes anything that we consume or use is a terrible thing.
Oh, for sure.
For whatever reason, I've just been a petty little bitch about Apple, and I will continue to be.
Listen, you pick your enemies like you pick your friends, man. Both define who you are. Apple is a fine enemy to have.
That's right. Come get some.
All right, you heard it here first on MIK. Apple and Jason Andrews title fight happening soon.
I'm gonna get so sued.
Jason, thank you so much, brother. This has been amazing.
No, thank you, man. The pleasure's all mine.
Not else. After this, we'll be right back. Thank you so much. There you have it, Night Owls. There you have it. What an excellent conversation with Jason Andrews of the Paranormal Patio podcast. We laughed, we cried, we showed every type of emotion during this thing, and damn if it wasn't one of the funnest and most insightful and synchronistically strange conversations the entire time I've been doing Midnight in Kentucky. So thank you so much, Jason, for coming on the show. And if you guys haven't already, be sure to tune in to Paranormal Patio. It is straight up one of my favorite shows on the podcast airwaves these days. He's interviewed so many great guests, which we didn't even get around really to talking about because we were talking about Jason's experiences, which I loved. Jason has had as I'm sure you guys have heard, a hell of an experience over the course of his lifetime, being initiated into whatever the phenomena is that is initiating him into it. So again, thank you, Jason, for coming on the show. I couldn't be more excited for Surface, Before Me, My Altar, the documentary coming out very soon. Check out the trailer for that, which is in the show notes. The trailer alone is worth the viewing experience. Such an interesting story that, of course, leads right back here to Kentucky. And Jason dropped some bombshells on us in this thing. The fact that Aleister Crowley's kinfolk are buried in Livingston County, Kentucky, and that, Aleister probably visited them at some point when he was doing this whole Masonic Lodge tour. I thought that was very interesting. And actually, I think Nate may have talked about that before in Penny Royal, but to bring it in connection with his entire mystic poetic journey that Jason is on with the phenomena, I thought was very interesting. And the fact, the story he told about going to this cemetery to see these graves and driving past what he thought for sure was certain death, and then arriving at the cemetery only to find it full of green pine needles, which he's deathly allergic to. I definitely thought that was a crossing the void moment, a moment of initiation, a moment to see how far he was willing to go to connect with the phenomena. And I thought that was really interesting. And there's so many parts of Jason's experience that seem in a lot of ways the hero's journey or the initiation process, that Jason is being initiated into whatever this phenomena is. And that was my major takeaway from this episode, is that, in these mystic experience that Jason's having, it definitely seems like something is communicating with him. And as I mentioned, I have had my own experiences with these things, which I hope to bring about more in depth at some point on the show, but we'll see how that goes. And a lot of Jason's experiences that he talks about are more profound instances that I have seen for myself. The synchronicities, the dreams, the connection with something that seems like it is guiding you to something else. And all of this is to say that, this is very much the journey of those medieval heroes who encountered the Fae, who led them in certain ways or led them down certain pathways. I found Jason's connections to all of this, the way that his experience has played out over the years, from the dreams to realizing the dream in reality, there at the house in Smithland, and all of that prophetic nature of those dreams that played out a few years later, only to lead him back to Livingston County to find, these graves of Aleister Crowley's family, and to find the legacy of magic and synchronicity in Livingston County, and to expound upon that. In a way, it seems like that magic is calling to Jason to tell its story and to let people know about what has happened there over the centuries and over the decades. And I think the culmination of that is Jason finding this entrance, this cave entrance in Livingston County that, is directly described in Adorpa. Adorpa, basically alludes to this very cave's existence. Jason showed me the tattoo on his arm, of this cave entrance. And when he was telling me that he had found this place, it blew my mind, as I'm sure you guys can hear listening back to the interview. The fact that he believes he has found the entrance to the hollow earth right here in the Bluegrass, how could I not get excited about that, Night Owls? And I absolutely believe that Jason probably has found this cave that's described in Adorpa. As Jason said himself, we have to take the A-B path. Is Adorpa a completely fictional book, or is everything that, is in there describing some part of the reality that we inhabit here? And if the B path is correct and he's found this cave, well, then that means, my friends, that there may be, pale, tall, crawling beings coming out of this thing that lead back to some hollow earth base within the earth mantle, or who knows what, So yeah, how could I not get excited when Jason told me that he believes he has found the entrance to the hollow earth in Livingston County, in addition to, a connection with Aleister Crowley and all of those works of magic. That's my jam, guys. Yeah. And I'm really excited to see just what Jason has drawn from these things, and, to see the things that he's got on film in Surface when it debuts. Which brings me to something that I absolutely wanted to touch on before we put this thing to bed, and that's what Jason himself believes is, we were talking off the air about him finally finding the ending to his documentary, and he talks a little about it in this episode, but, I thought it was beautiful what he said about how all of this experience and all of this strangeness and all of this phenomena has brought him into this wonderful community that is based around these strange things. And I make the joke a lot on the show that maybe the goblins we were seeking were the friends we made along the way, but it does absolutely seem like these strange worlds and these liminal spaces that we inhabit when we're doing this type of work or we're having these types of experiences absolutely do culminate in relationships with people and in finding the people that you need to find, that need to find you, that need to give you some piece of information or need to guide you in some way on your journey. And just like Jason talks about that, and I have seen that, of course. I have found so many people in this journey that I needed to find and that I needed to speak with, and not just on things of the paranormal, but things of the spiritual and things of just life in general. And there are so many stories of different people having encounters with something strange, and it leading to them finding the person that they get married to, or them finding their a person that they're going to be close with for the rest of their life. So, I really do think it's interesting and touching that Jason believes that this is the culmination of these experiences, that this community is the culmination of these experiences, because, we've developed our own little cool community here at MIK with the MIK team and our listeners, and that expands out into, the paranormal community here at large in our area, in Somerset and in Russell Springs. And, I'm happy to be a part of that, and I'm happy that these weird worlds that we all inhabit together and these strange times can bring us together like that and make us into this weird little paranormal, supernatural family that we are. Also, as you savvy night owls may have noticed, there was that little bit in there that was redacted. You guys can hear the entire story on the upcoming Midnight in Kentucky Halloween special that will be available here on the mainstream Halloween day, and it is a great one. It's a great one. Dealing with the dream space and the entities that may dwell within, and taking all of Jason's story into account, it makes it even more interesting. And speaking of that Halloween special, we have stories coming up from some of our favorite guests. Jason Andrews, of course, Lynn Hightower, and then we have some stories coming up from you guys and from these conventions that we've been to recently where you guys have told us your stories, and, we've walked away kind of mind blown from those as well. So I can't wait for you guys to hear that. That's going to be awesome. Be on the lookout for that. Like I said, Halloween Day here on the main MIK feed. Speaking of the thinning of the veil, as the veil thins this year, MIK begins to appear not only on your podcast providers, Night Owls, but at select window areas around Kentucky in the corporeal realms as well. If you are listening to this in real time, and what is real time after all, this Saturday on 10/22 we'll be manifesting into reality with an all-new presentation, Guidelines for Encounters with the Otherworldly, at the Rockcastle Arts Association's Halloween celebration at the Rockcastle County Courthouse, alongside the always incredible storyteller. If you guys haven't seen the storyteller, man, you are in for a treat. He is incredible. I'm hoping to get him to tell us a Halloween story for the Halloween special when I link up with him, and maybe to get him on the show for a full interview. But you guys are going to be amazed if you haven't seen this storyteller. He focuses on discussing the darker side of Appalachian folklore, and it's a fully immersive show, to say the least. So festivities begin then on 10/22 at the Rockcastle County Courthouse at 8 p.m. local time. Then on 10/29, the next Saturday, we'll be live from the Battletown Witch Festival in Meade County, Kentucky at the Meade Olin Park to discuss the area's rich history of bluegrass folklore and high strangeness. We'll also be hosting a paranormal Q&A, whatever that may turn out to be, and hearing audience accounts of your own experiences with the strange and otherworldly. The festivities begin at 10 a.m. local time there.
And then we are remembering the 5th of November at the Russell County Public Library as part of their Books, Art, and Music celebration with our production company under the Ransom Letter Publishing banner. Come get your MIK merch as well as physical copies of short stories and poetry collections from yours truly. And there's going to be a ton of other vendors there who I know are amazing personally that you guys are going to dig a lot. So come out to that on the 5th of November at the Russell County Public Library. And of course, 30 days from today, on 11, 19, and 20, we'll be vending at one of our favorite yearly conventions, Crypticon 2022, at the Clarion Conference Center in Lexington, Kentucky. All kinds of amazing people that you guys, I don't even have to say this, you guys know Crypticon is the event. We'll be there both days vending, so come out and see us at one of our appearances this season before the veil closes for another year. And if you can't make it out to those, of course, you can always visit us in the hypertext dimensions over on the World Wide Web. We are very active on our Facebook page and, of course, the Midnight in Kentucky website, midnightinkentucky.com. And if you're looking for bonus content, if you're looking for Midnight in Kentucky merch, if you're looking to support the show, come on over to patreon.com/midnightinkentucky. Bonus episodes, always sending out free merch. And frankly, guys, you help us keep doing our strange selves more than you guys know. And I know I say it on every episode, but I mean it on every episode. I appreciate each and every one of you who supports the show, not only on Patreon if you're a patron, but I very much appreciate that, but also by listening to the show, by recommending the show, just by visiting the website or the Facebook, sharing your sightings. There's so much you can do to support the show, and we really, really and deeply appreciate each and every one of you who support it in any way that you can. That's going to do it tonight for Midnight in Kentucky. We have a lot coming up for the remainder of the month and for the Samhain Halloween season, so be on the lookout. It's going to be a good one. Until the next moon rises, Night Owls, for Midnight in Kentucky, I'm Ben. Good night.
You've been listening to Midnight in Kentucky,
a Ransom Letter Publishing podcast.
Join us on Twitter and Facebook,
or get in contact with your questions, comments, or stories of high strangeness
at midnightinkentuckypodcast@gmail.com.